We're continuing our series then, Look Where Am I? Thinking about the places where we are with a sense of fresh perspective and confidence that wherever we are placed right now, we can be confident that there is a purpose because God always has a plan. And as I said at the beginning of this series, perhaps COVID has created a new awareness of the various places where we are put, where God has put us. We became more conscious of our families, our homes, and our neighborhoods because we spent much more time there. We became more conscious in different ways of our workplaces and our social groupings because we were no longer able to gather with them. We became conscious of our longing and need for the church family where we are placed when we were more estranged through COVID, at least physically at any rate. As we continue in our series now, we're going to continue building on what Claire started a few weeks ago when we were thinking about the family. God has placed us all in families. Now, whatever we feel about our family right now, and we recognize, don't we, that families come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes, biological and non-biological. We all have family in a different sense, people that we are journeying through life with. God has placed us in those relationships, and even if we've arrived at this particular place through difficult means like Joseph in the Old Testament, or we've arrived at that place by more perhaps wholesome means like Abraham, we are reminded where we began with this series that however we've arrived at the place that we are in, we can be confident that there is a purpose because God always has a plan. And so as we continue to think about the family, I want to linger there just for another week as I share with you what I think is a helpful tool. I want to linger with the family for one more week because I think it's easy for us to overlook it. When we think about living with a sense of intentionality or doing something for God or achieving something, it's usually we leave home, we go off and we do it, and then we come back. And if when we go off and we do things, we expend our energies and our time and we give the best of our talents and our insights and we set goals and we work towards those goals and we achieve great things, it's easy when we come back to our families not to have the same level of energy or intentionality. It's easy to take what happens in our families for granted. And therefore, I think it's really easy for our families to drift. But if we take hold of the truth of this particular series, even in our families, God has great and wonderful purposes because God always has a plan. So how do we discover what God's plan is for our family? In fact, how do we discover what God's plan is in any of the areas or places where we find ourselves right now? Well, this is a tool that I'd like to share with you that I think is particularly helpful. Well, at any rate, I've found it particularly helpful. And the tool is this: to observe the seasons. To observe the seasons. In our modern world, we have become less aware because we are less dependent upon the seasons. The clocks went back last week, didn't change anything. I put the light on a little bit earlier and I carried on working at the same rate for the same length of time. It got a bit colder, didn't it, just a few days ago, in fact. It didn't change anything. I just switched the heating on and carried on in the same way. So we, by and large, can carry on the same rhythms, almost relentlessly, you might say, even though the seasons change. But God has given us seasons. And I think the seasons are so often a clue as to what God is doing, what his plan and his purpose is for us. The seasons are there to help us. They help us know when to plant and when to plough and when to gather in and when to rest. The seasons gave the working life of our year a cadence. And when the seasons changed and the days became shorter and the nights became longer, that also caused a change to happen within us. We needed to lean in to the season. I remember being particularly aware of this when a number of years ago now, we went out to Happy Home in Kenya, an orphanage and a children's ministry there that we still support as a church. And at night time, literally in the middle of nowhere, where there was no electricity, it went completely black. There was nothing you could do. It was dark. All you could do was sit and chat and tell stories and enjoy each other's company. It was a wonderful thing. A wonderful reminder of the way the seasons encourage us to lean in to what God's plan and purpose might be for us during them. The seasons help us. They help us know what to do and when to do it. So this is the big idea for today. Observing the season in your family, or whatever place you might be thinking about, observing the season in your workplace or in your neighborhood or in your small group, missional community, wherever it might be. Observing the season helps us understand what it is God is asking of us. It gives us a big, great clue as to what God is doing and how we can join Him in it. So let me ask you, if you were to think for a moment, what season is your family in? What season is your family in? And remember, family can be all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Maybe it's a season to rebuild your marriage because the previous season has put a strain on it for one reason or another. Maybe it's a season to help a child get through a GCSE exam or an A-level exam or begin preparation for university or just simply starting school. Maybe it's a season to help a friend who's part of your family journey through their grief. Or maybe it's a season to help one of you deal with a difficulty or an illness, or a particular challenge that they are facing, or a transition that they are going through. Maybe it's a season to help someone who's afraid of something right now and it's debilitating, to help a child who is having trouble relationally at school or being struggling to work out their circle of friends or going through puberty and trying to work out what that change means for them. Maybe it's a season to rest, to enjoy God's goodness, to celebrate, to feast. Maybe it's a season to really pray together about something that's been on your hearts for a while and you've talked about it for a while, but you've never actually got on with praying. Maybe it's a season to dig deeper into worshiping together and reading the Bible together. Maybe it's a season to be a light in your neighborhood. The dynamics in your neighborhood are changing and you can see an opportunity there and it's something for you to seize. Maybe it's a season for a new adventure, to discover or learn something new. Maybe it's a season to lament about something that's changing, a child leaving home. Again, a grief or a loss, a friend moving away, or perhaps just some other change that's happened in the family. And it would be so easy just to keep going. But there's a season. And the season is inviting us to see what God is up to see what God is doing, and to join Him in it. As I say, I find this lens really helpful because once I can see what the season is, it becomes relatively easy to understand what God is doing and how I can play my part in it. So what season is your family in? And once you've begun to see that, how can you respond? How do I respond to the season? Well, if you can see what the season is, then probably immediately you can see some things that you could do that would really help in that season. For the person that's struggling, they need more time. They need more of me. I need to do more relationally with them. I need to involve myself more in what they're going through and what they're struggling with. Now, if I'm going to give more time to that, then I will have to give less time to something else. I can't just do more there without doing less probably somewhere else. So the season will require for me a change in emphasis, a change in priority, a change in activity. And there may be some things that we might need to stop altogether. And of course, in seasons, it's not just creating time for things, is it? It's creating the right level of energy for things. If I'm going to help someone, I need to make sure that my energy levels are up and I'm ready to go to seize that opportunity when I'm with them. I can remember that we used to have date night on a Thursday night, Kerry and I. Thursday night was kind of the end of our working week. We'd have Friday off, and then we're into the more traditional weekend, which involved a fair bit of work usually for us. So Thursday night was like the end of the week, and we'd make effort. We'd get the house tidier. I'd often come home from work a bit later that night. The kids would go to bed and so on. But by the time we'd eaten the lovely meal that Kerry would usually prepare, moments later we were both fast asleep. Whilst we were creating the time, we were not thinking about the level of energy and intentionality that moment would require. And so as you think about the season that your family is in and how you need to respond, it's not just time, it's also going to be energy and focus. I find the perspective of season so helpful as well, because you know that it's not forever, it's for a period of time. Now, don't misunderstand me. When you're in a particularly acute season, maybe someone is ill or you've got a young child, it can feel like that season is going to go on forever. And to be sure, some seasons in our lives do go on forever, and we need a special kind of grace for those seasons. But if we're honest, most seasons pass all too quickly. Is it autumn already? Where did this year go? Gosh, Christmas is just round the corner. My child is off to university. I thought they'd just started in reception class. The seasons can go so fast. The moments can pass us by. And even things that people are ill, or perhaps someone's going through a season of grief, that season will pass. They will move on with or without us. The season is now, so now is the moment for us to make adjustments, to respond to the season, to see the purpose of God in it, because we know that God always has a plan. It's easy, isn't it, to miss the season. It's easy just to keep going with the same rhythms, to do the same thing as we've always done. And that's the whole point of what Ecclesiastes is saying. There is a time for everything, a season for every activity under heaven. We can miss it, can't we? We can miss the season because we were too late. We can miss the season because we're in it, but we're thinking about what we think or we fear might happen next. We can be anxious about the future, and we can miss today because we're worried about tomorrow. We can also miss the seasons that we're in because we're still stuck in seasons that have now passed. Again, with our kids, sometimes I would think about if there was an evening when I wasn't working, and often working in the evenings, an evening not working was a bit of a treat, and I'd anticipate this kind of utopia of an evening. And then find myself spending all evening kind of clearing up, putting the kids to bed, and so on and so forth, and not realizing that the days of the kids going to bed at 6:30 and us having a quiet evening in a stress-free house, that season was long gone. But I was still living as if that season still exists. And I think that can happen in different places in our lives, can't we? We can carry on as if a season that is now well and truly finished still exists. It's like persisting in wearing shorts long after the sun has gone down, long after the summer is over. We can cling on to it, wishing it was still true. But no, that season has gone. And we need to lament the passing of seasons in order that we can grab hold of the new seasons that are coming. The challenge then, for all of us, if you can see the season your family is in, how will you respond? What will you start? What will you stop? What needs to change right now so that you can get involved in the purpose, because God always has a plan? What might you need to start? What might you need to stop? What might you need to change? What's the season right now? That's the big idea. It gives me a great clue to see what God is doing, and I hope it does that for you too. God bless you this week.